life is not what happens to us; it's how we react to it.
Oh yeah.
It's our reactions and how we show up and what we do with the stuff that happens around us that really determines our life experience. And I think about that all the time, and I also think about how people have different pain tolerances or resilience or emotional tolerances or intelligence as well. And so something that could be detrimental to one is another day in the life of another.
Mm.
It's a brush off the shoulder. It's no problem. And so it also, for that perspective, helped me show up in the world, not only with family, with friends and relationships and everything. It helped me show up because I'm like, you know what? It might be nothing to me. I've been through plenty of things in my life, traumatic events and everything, and I'm at this point, but they're not there. So I don't want to add to that weight because that one thing could be crushing them. That is just me getting a coffee in the morning. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I think when we're able to really step back and even put yourself in other shoes, because it's very easy to be like, yo, this is my world, my story, my life, and you only focus on what's right in front of you. That if you can step into the shoes of somebody else and kind of let your ego go down and maybe have some empathy and try to understand what's going on, it really helps us show up better for each other as a whole, I think. But there's things that, lessons and experiences I've had over time that have taught me this. And I always try to share wherever I can. That's why I love having conversations with people like you who, you dedicated your life to this and it's truly in service of others. And then you have your own experiences to add to that as well. And it's the more you can share, the more you help people. And it's the coolest thing in the world, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And another layer of all this,
Mm.
and you touched on it some, is the idea that when you're having anxiety, especially if it's performance based, uh, and I shouldn't say that especially because if you're having anxiety, it can be about so many different things, and you don't really care what it's about. You just know I'm feeling this terrible nervousness, and like I can't move forward, and that this is just anything in the future is devastating. You are taking on too much. So, for example, a golfer. One of the things I will say to golfers is stop trying to take all 18 holes on at once. And then when they kind of, okay. Then I say, stop trying to take on so many shots at once. This shot, the other hasn't even, it's not, we don't even know where it's going to be. This shot is your entire world right now. And that's not to put pressure on that shot. It's simply allowing yourself to stay in this shot. You don't have to go any further than this. And dialing it back to where instead of trying to take on minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, you just take on what's right here. And I was good at that before the melanoma diagnosis. But let me tell you, when you hear that, this is melanoma, or people out there, this is cancer, this is whatever. That's where I learned to really go into the moments within the seconds, because you try to get, if you allow yourself to go too far ahead of this moment, you can't take it all on. And science is showing us the way the brain works, that the most we can take on without causing actual measurable trauma to ourselves, 7 seconds.
Mm.
I mean, think about that, 7 seconds. That if you try to go beyond that, now we can handle it. We can handle thinking 10 minutes down, but you're starting to make it to where you're out of balance. You're not designed to do more than that. And that's why we feel anxiety. Most people, let's get outside the world of sports, relationships, life, whatever. If you have a conversation with them, which is what I do, and I start asking, well, tell me what you're thinking. What's this nervousness? What's this anxiety? What is it in your mind that triggers this? And they start telling you, it's usually almost always so far out in front. It's, well, this is out on the horizon, or this, if there's dealing with social anxiety, I'm going to see this group, or I have to go to work Monday, or whatever it is. And if you can start to get them to dial back and just, hey, stay right here with me, just right here. That's where the power is. And that's where not only success is, again, talking about Tiger Woods, that first Masters he won, when he made that last putt, I saw an interview and they said, what was your first thought? He said, I actually felt a little confused. I'm like, what? Tiger Woods felt confused? And I don't know if he used the word confused, but then he said, because I realized I had no more shots to play. He was so focused and was not thinking ahead. He was staying right on this shot that when that putt went in, He was like, I don't know what to do next because I'm so used to going right to the next shot and staying right there. And that probably explains why he's who he is.
I read a lot of Eckhart Tolle
Yep.
and, the power of now and the
Mhm.
new earth. And he speaks a lot about the present moment. And like, I feel like that's super relatable to kind of what you're explaining as well. Right.
Right.
And that really did help me a lot with anxiety, like not worrying too much about the future or the past and just trying to focus on what's happening right now. And, in like AA and stuff like that, they say one day at a time, right? Because, you know, a month of sobriety, a year of sobriety is just way too much to handle. And to hear 7 seconds is like mind blowing because even one day at a time is like still technically way too much time to
It is.
think about. It's like 5 seconds at a time. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've definitely heard, there's a saying, basically how anxiety is seeing yourself in the future, more or less, and depression is kind of like reliving trauma in the past. And I've always been intrigued by the lines between the both of them too, and how people can navigate both of them, honestly. But yeah, absolutely, like casting a net. There's a difference between casting a net and trying to catch everything versus hyper focusing on the one fish, right? The one thing that you need at hand, and being present in those moments too. It's like it's awesome to hear that because it's definitely a mindset that I've studied, and I've seen the line between very hyper successful people is when they can hyper focus their energy into one thing in one moment and being present. And because really all we have is right now, right? This is
Right.
the only moment that we do have. So if you could focus everything into that, all that energy goes there, and then it takes you to the next place and the next place, and the next place. Because like you can paint your picture and think you're going to have every single shot you're going to when you get on the golf course, and the next thing you know, it bounces off the house, and then it's a whole different ball game. You know what I mean? Golf game, and it's just nice to be able to pull back and say, okay, well, let me just take a second, let me settle, let me breathe, and then let me just be, and then what happens next, and I've had depression my whole life, and dealing with that and understanding things that I can do to actively work on being better, and also the mindset, being positive. That's one thing that I think my friends over the years, that no matter when, no how matter how deep I was in it, they would always say, coming forward now, you would always say, be positive, be positive. And I'm like, well, it's the only way I could think about getting through it, even though everything else pointed me to wanting to be the other way. So there's little tricks that I think that we can do, even physically shocking our body or putting a smile on your face that you don't want to for 30 seconds or a minute or whatever it is. Go do a cold plunge, do things to like really get yourself out of the situation. Because if you even look at people's body language, which I'm sure you see all the time, you can see somebody who has anxiety. You can see it physically. You can see someone who has depression, the way they sit. It's like you can mentally picture someone who's like slumped over, a little quiet, reserved, and I know that firsthand. So when I do that, I try to just immediately change, open up, and just focus on things that are important to me and things that matter, and being grateful. If I'm grateful for every single moment, then what is there to be sad about, Although
Exactly.
easier said than done, but yeah, yeah.
I've definitely been extremely lucky. My brothers and I, we've lived in a very, under fortunate circumstances. But it wasn't until, I've had two experiences where doctors told me I shouldn't be alive right now. There was nothing threatening me after that moment, but there were two experiences that could have caused it, should have caused it. But like those moments I felt have like certainly been the most effective in like making you look around and smell the roses and just life changing. I think life changing is like the only way to really describe it. Um, but yeah, I think lucky and life changing. But like you said, it really resonated with me. Like you got to go all the way in the negative direction to really experience what you're going through now.
Yeah, that's a valuable tool. And sometimes we don't want to think about that. But I had it happen again for me, and I appreciated it. But there was a nurse who was examining me because I have to go in every 3 months now for a few years for them to check me out. And she had an iPad where they had pictures of the melanoma. And this particular nurse she may have been a physician's assistant, but she hadn't seen it yet. And she just said, I just want to see what the original looked. And she stopped and she goes, oh my. And there was just this quiet, and she said, "That's a nasty looking one." She said, "That's probably the worst I've ever seen." And she's like, she just stopped and looked at me and she said, "You are a lucky man." And I just remember feeling in that moment, another moment where it didn't take much to make me happy. It was just, that made me happy, you
Yeah.
know? And unfortunately, there are people who don't get to hear that news. And that's sad and unfortunate. But sometimes we have to think a minute about those things so we can appreciate, you know, our lives. And one of the things that you trying to remember what you said, but it made me think of something else, which was, there's something I call directed laughter. Okay. And it's where I think it was you talking about putting on a smile for 30 seconds, even if you don't feel it. And there are chemical changes when you make yourself smile. But I will tell people that, let's say that things are not going your way. All right. And you're having a bad day and there's some negatives. What you can actually do to help yourself feel better is something called directed laughter. And if you've ever seen Austin Powers, you know how Dr. Evil will put his pinky up to his mouth and he'll go, "Woo, ooh, like that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell people, do that. Just go, do that. And I usually say, you can say, everything's going according to plan, which is a really sarcastic statement, but it's also funny. And then do that evil laugh. And people kind of think that sounds just like such a simplistic thing. And then they do it and they're like, I do feel a lot better.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'll even tell some of my golfers, hey, you're out there and let's say you hit a bad shot. I said, I get it. You want to break the club in two and all that. I said, go ahead and say everything is according to plan, or all part of the plan. Just kind of take a minute to laugh about it. You can refocus and get serious and go to the next shot. But taking that moment to push back a little bit against the negative and almost mock it is a pretty powerful thing to do. And you get the benefit of even fake laughing produces dopamine in your brain.
Yeah.
It's very helpful and it helps your serotonin levels. And there's some debate of whether it increases or lowers them. And all I know is people feel better.
Right.
Doing this fake laughter. So, hey, if you want to try laughing like Dr. Evil, it feels good to do.
I think you're going to see me on the golf course doing that a lot.
I see this right.
Yeah, you'll definitely know. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
And subscribe and hit the bell for a whole lot more to come.